Everybody, we're going to start the six. It is July 4 p.m. and we appreciate you all being here. We see some new faces, and we're going to start with quick introduction. Some of you have been to some of the meetings all, so let's start with you, Morgan. Would you do our contact disclosure? Okay. After this, after this.
Brian Phillips, is a resident, also one part of the board.
Jennifer Lutz, Mayor.
On Ranselson, also working on
Katie Spolver, in the chair, and let's on that board. I do, however, with actually the straight sides.
We're friends, the planning commissioner.
John T. Ham, property owner in the city area.
Let's probably one. Regional City Council.
Scott Woodford, Community Development Director of the Center System.
I'm Andrew Parrish with a company called MIG. We're going on Zoom with Matt Casey, who's also with us.
Howdy.
Your members would like to.
The oral members on the Zoom by chance.
Are there any video members in the audience who would like to introduce themselves?
Tony Breyer, visitors.
Welcome, Tony. Welcome, Kristen.
So there are two on Zoom.
And two on
No.
Zoom.
Not members. So.
They're not members.
No.
of
Okay, perfect.
And how about you folks up there? Would you like to say hello?
Hi, I'm Carol, Planning Department. Hi.
Matthew Martin, City Principal Planner.
I'm Lucia, I'm the planning intern.
Certainly, their city manager. While we're tagging public works.
Thanks, everyone. All right. Do you want to do the conflict of interest?
Yeah. We're just gonna go around and disclose any conflicts of interest that need to be disclosed as per Oregon government ethics law, where you are all public officials and apply with the Oregon government ethics law. I'll just kind of read a little intro here so the members of the public can have a benefit of hearing. It identifies and defines two types of conflicts of interest for public officials. An actual conflict of interest is defined as is defined in RS 244.0201, and a potential conflict of interest is defined in RS 244.02013. In brief, a conflict of interest exists whether the actions of a public official acting in their capacity as a public official would or could result in financial benefit or detriment to the public official, relative of the public official, or a business with which either the public official or relative of the public official is associated. So the words would and could are key here. Would is an actual conflict, could is a potential conflict. As noted in the guidelines that I shared with you this week, the committee members of the steering committee only have a potential conflict of interest when participating in this official action, decision, or recommendation. Because the committee only makes recommendations on any potential urban growth boundary amendments or matters related thereto, rather than making any final decisions. It is only a potential conflict of interest because any financial impacts is not certain, given that any recommendations from the committee could be adopted, modified, or rejected by city council. In contrast, remember the city council with a conflict of interest when acting as part of the city council would have an actual conflict of interest because they're considering the final land of the city regarding the potential urban growth as the amendment. It also provides guidance for those city councilors or plan commissioners serving on the advisory committee in that they do not have to recuse themselves in the matter acted on by the committee. comes before the city council or planning commission on account of your participation on the committee. So if we could just go around and if you could just disclose whether you have no conflicts or potential conflicts and don't think in this case we have any actual conflicts given the context. Morgan, if you would like to give us your doctor.
Brian Williams, no comment.
Jennifer Last, no conflict of interest.
Connor Atchison, no conflict of interest.
Please Fuller, no conflict of interest. Susan Malberg, no conflict of interest.
Right there.
John Tehan, potential conflict of interest. Any other potential conflict?
No, it's potential conflict of interest.
Michael Frieden, no conflict.
Thank you, everyone. We're not going to go on to the overall project status report. Andrew?
Yeah, I'd just like to touch on the agenda for today. So we did welcome and introductions. So we got an overall status report that Scott and I will provide. And we're going to spend the bulk of the time talking about refinements to the recommended boundary location. And after that discussion, if we have to, we'll talk a little bit more about the Juice County rezone and the status of that. We'll have a little bit of time for public comments and we'll talk about next steps. So in terms of the current project status, this is the timeline graphic we've used for the last year we've been meeting here. So we're now at the point where we have we're honing in on our preferred alternative. We expect to have finding that's when the revised growth boundary after this, and we have some additional area planning tasks, which include thinking about annexation policy, where infrastructure might go, things of that nature happening sort of the tail end of it here. In terms of recent activity that the city and the consultants have been engaging in, we've had discussions with other cities and the Department of Land Conservation and Development related to annexation policies. What tends to happen after a rough boundary amendment? How quickly do city infrastructure plans get updated? What kind of area planning has happened in the city of Benton and other places? So we're kind of taking a census of recent expansions to get a good sense of what's been going on in the state. We prepared some additional kind of sub options or variations on a theme for the boundary to talk about today. And we're monitoring the Getty Meadows Village rezoning process, and yeah, we're thinking about our initial framework for area and that everything.
Just wanted to first welcome everybody back, welcome to the committee, and thank you for your continued participation with this endeavor. It's gone a little farther than we initially anticipated. This is the sixth and maybe final meeting, hopefully final meeting, we'll find out. And also I want to welcome the members of the audience who have come to participate in this meeting and who have participated throughout this process, as well as folks on Zoom. So it's our hope that we can get to a point where we have a recommendation for a preferred alternative going forward to the planning commission and the council tonight. So our focus is to devote as much time as we can to making sure that you have the time to do that discussion in full and feel that we have a thorough conversation. The hope is to come out of this meeting with a recommendation. You may not get to a point where you're all 100% in agreement, or you might not even have a full recommendation for exactly what the boundary is. Maybe you have an agreement for 90% of the boundary. That's okay too. One of the options we have is to move this on to the planning commission and council with 90% agreement or thereabouts, with your feedback and your comments about what your decision making points were. You can have the planning commission and the council take it the rest of the way. We could also, if you get to a point where you feel like you still haven't had enough time up this meeting, we don't want anybody coming out of this meeting feeling that they haven't had a chance to thoroughly discuss this, and that the 7th meeting is an option. We can fit it in the schedule somehow, but we're going to try to not do too much talking and let you guys do the talking today, so that we can get to that point. That's why we might not have as much time for public comment as we usually do. We've had 5 meetings already where we take public comment. There's going to be further opportunities for the planning commission and the council for public comment. We've reported written correspondence to you as well. So we only had 15 minutes of public comment tonight, but I feel that this is the time for the exchange committee to kind of deliberate on what they've heard so far and get to a decision. As far as the rezone update, just wanted to touch briefly on that and why I guess concept B is still in front of you. I think the last time that we met, the steering committee's recommendation at that time was to move on with concept A and not concept B. That recommendation was forwarded to the planning commission and council at their joint meeting in May. And it was a decision at that time to keep concept B on the line. There was no, at that point, no overwhelming need to make a decision at that time. So that was a kind of a council decision to kind of keep that on the line for consideration with any coming up in September. So that's the reason why it's still in front of you. There's new information since we met last time. The hearings officer for the county did recommend approval of the rezone. It still has to go from the board, but that's a new piece of information for you to consider. So we'll kind of leave it at that for now. If you have any questions when we get to that time, we can answer further questions. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Andrew to lead you through the whole presentation.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, I've just got a few slides to kind of summarize what was in your packet. And a little bit of reminding of where we've been and where we hope to go. So this is based on the findings of land need that we've discussed. That includes about 170 acres of residential land, which accommodates about 1,175 units at an assumed density of 8.5 units an acre. There's 50 acres of employment land that we're looking to accommodate. Most of that is commercial land, about 70%, 30% is industrial. There's also an identified need for parks and open space and trails, as well as a school site. So that gives us a total of about 250 acres of gross land. And when you account for future rights of way, et cetera, that's something like 180 to 200 acres of net developable land. And the reason why the numbers are kind of fuzzy is because in some of these situations, you're looking at something that might be in a floodplain or that has existing developments on it. So there are the math is surprisingly calculated, surprisingly complicated, depending on what you assume is going to remain undevelopable there. But we're targeting 180 to 200 acres of net developable land. Good target to so if you recall early on in this process, we had this really big study area, narrowed that down to just the priority 1 lands. Those are things that are not farm and forest lands, and that still included a whole lot of land that was in rural subdivisions. We winnowed that down to these areas, which are various combinations in the alternatives that we're going to be talking through. They are what we call the inner northeast properties there in kind of purple. Barclay Meadows subdivision, Crosswind Landing subdivision near the airport, the Barclay Meadows first edition, which is a number of properties that contain the Indian Ford Creek and Meadow, some land adjacent to Highway 126 south of Whitefish Street, and the Mackenzie Meadows properties on the west side are in this kind of list of sub areas that are all based on the goal 14 criteria. We've been looking at all good land to urbanize with big assuming that everything is successful. So last time we met, we talked about concept A and concept B. Shown on the map here is concept A. This is So all of the concept A, and refinements that we're gonna talk about use land that rank highly on the goal 14 factors. We've made 3 initial refinements just to kind of think about and test some of the ideas that we've heard come out of this committee and come out of city council and planning commission. So those are A1, A2, and A3. And the kind of the ideas that we're testing with these different configurations are including more of Indian Ford Creek in the meadow for the explicit purpose of getting more land for open space and trails, and protecting that as kind of open space. Getting more land inside the urban growth boundary near Sister Eagle Airport for commercial and industrial uses, and getting more land in along Highway 126 for commercial and industrial uses. And so the 3 concepts that we have here kind of test those 3 I got golden priority. So what we hope to get out of this discussion are refinements of these concepts or maybe new ideas and explanation of around the rationale that you all have, showing the work of the committee so that planning commission and council have information, maybe not just one boundary map, but why is this a good idea? And if the numbers need to change for whatever reason, what were your thoughts about why these areas were better than others? So just to walk through them briefly, this is concept A. This incorporates many of the highest ranked parcels in the study area. It includes some of the land adjacent to Highway 126. It includes some of the land in the vicinity of the meadow and frontage on Whitefish Creek for kind of open space purposes. But it doesn't include the full meadow area that folks have talked about. So that's one of the kind of major cons that we see with these. So with that, for concept A. Concept A1, as shown here, it incorporates highly ranked parcels. It includes a significant amount of land in the vicinity of the meadow. But it doesn't include land adjacent to Highway 126, and it kind of as shown here, it doesn't really have a lot of locations that might be good for light industrial or commercial land. Not a whole lot of highway frontage, not adjacent to the airport. Concept A2 moves a bit further north, so rather than getting that land adjacent to the meadow and Indian Ford Creek, it does go to the airport to Crossman Landing. So it also has no land adjacent to Highway 126. And then A3, taking that idea and smoothing it all to the south. So this also incorporates highly ranked parcels, and it includes a large amount of land, basically all the land south of Whitefish Creek or on Highway 126. But it doesn't have as much land on its way to the meadow and Indian Ford Creek there. So you see these are all very similar kind of acreages involved, and maybe there's 10 or 15 acres to play with here and there. But we tried to follow property lines and show the variations on it, basically what we're showing here. And just for reference, concept B is shown here. So this is what we showed at the last meeting. It includes the Kins Meadow Village properties and areas near the airport and the inner northeast properties there. So I think that's all I have for my brief introduction. And again, we're hoping to get lots of discussion and ideas from you all, and I can support by doing some quick sketches or calculations or things on the screen here as needed. I have the maps kind of available online. And if we, as we get close to time here, we do have kind of a straw poll voting exercise that we'll do with your phones on the screen here, so we can kind of see where people are in their preferences. All right. Sure.
Okay, thank you. Answer that. At this point in time, I'd like us all to think back to our last meeting and our discussions, the tail end of it. We spent a lot of time at that meeting talking about various things, and the end was very focused on coming up with some decisions, and we agreed at that time to leave Mackenzie Meadow Village on the sidelines and not consider it as part of our recommendation. So because it's still, in play with the county, and because the city council and planning commission have expressed some hope to keep, at least while they can run together, keep that door open. Thought it might be a good idea to spend a moment. We've all had time to think about it more since we last met, and have an actual vote at this point in the meeting amongst the steering committee members. Do we want to continue with that position? Because if we do want to continue with that position, then the discussion we have from this point forward allows us to not be concerned with that building block. If we have thought about it and some, or a majority of us want to, let's think about that one more time as we're all together, we can do that, but I'd like it to be a conscious decision. So with that in mind, we take a moment, and then I'd appreciate it, and I'd also talk with Scott about, for this very critical meeting, rather than raise hand, that we'd like to do someone pose a motion, a more formal vote taking, someone may pose a motion, and then we vote yay or nay, one of us. So why don't you think about that, and someone compose something succinct. At this point in time, we want to continue with our last meeting's decision to shelve MMB, and then we can vote yay or something. Okay.
Like the shelving, we putting it on hold, or the shelving not considering?
For the purposes of the steering committee, and today, we wouldn't consider it anymore. For the purposes, big picture of the city of Sisters, it will still be considered. Because the planning commission will hear all this information, whatever we discussed today. The county will continue with, there's gonna be a meeting of the county commissioners, and the county commissioners will decide if they decide to approve the zoning. And then there will be some kind of a hiatus, and then there'll be the potential for appeals. All that will be going on. The city council could still, the ultimate decision maker, could still decide, thank you for your input, steering committee, but we want to keep Mackenzie Meadow Village. We're gonna hold a break for them and see how this unfolds. Another month, another 2 months, don't know. But that does not mean that they want to take into consideration what we have put forth as a complete alternative without that. That makes sense?
I will do discussion. Depends on that.
Well. Probably could be refrained to, I move to show it and to, continue with the steering committee's position as decided for last year.
And to continue. Steering committee's position as last week, as decided last week.
I second.
Okay, take a vote. All those in favor? Aye. What?
Not just offer the door to.
Sure.
We got door one show, we don't be, oh, some. I think we should be sure, if on August 6th, that we should be thrown off. If on August 6th, the county commission not in favor, bring in. if they do, we're pretty much on equal footing. At least my understanding is on equal footing. So I think our committee should also consider door 3, which is shall or throw on, if not approved by the county commissioners. But if we are approved by the county commission, then I think we put some brand new figures on.
My understanding is that it's not surprising that we got a decision. It's not a decision, it's a recommendation. From the county, from the hearings officer. We have expected it to come in around this. And Scott and Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong. It's quite possible that when it goes before the county commission initially, that either right away or within a certain amount of time, they would also approve it. But what's always also been true is that we expect that there will be one or more appeals to this decision. And that what we know, our understanding is that the state cannot allow us to consider a property that's still in play where the appeals are still being played out.
No.
So it may be, Bill, that you get your approval on August 6th, and that may turn out to be a wonderful beginning of a series of green lights that eventually get you what you want. But it may take another year or two, don't know. So this is kind of restating things that we already talked about. So if anyone wants to chime in or change the motion to something different, please. Yeah.
Sounds like you've already seconded the motion. So. Can we go back and do that?
If we want to, we'll open up the debate again. I feel like we might be restating what has already been said. And if that's, what we want, we can. I did second the motion to vote. And I think I would like to see that honored.
I think if the one where I was doing the word, we do have an opportunity for discussion before a vote. And I think based on what we've heard and made from our joint meeting, and I'm looking directly at our city council right there, who probably have a keener memory about it. I'm a little concerned that if this body decides to set aside that village after doing a look planning commission and city council that we would like to keep that on the table, that we are undermining this committee's recommendation to planning commission and city council. So I think our plans have referred to the council maybe but I'm not sure that we are putting ourselves in the best position to be a recommendation body if we're not honoring what we are doing from working with one.
Would like to ask Scott the outcome of the May meeting. Was there a vote or was there even consensus from both the planning commission or the city council that that is what they wanted in fact?
There was no from the what I recall. Several others were at that meeting. Is that the right question?
Yeah, that was more of a head nod-ish. And I think the most important thing about what we're doing today is not what planning commission wants or even what city council wants. This body was convened to get the opinion of a steering committee, and I'm here as an advisory person from city council, but I am not in any way wanting to sway what you guys want to do. I think that is a worse undermining concept than what you guys wanted, and I think it's important for the public to know. You guys may want something that's different from city council or planning commission, and I think that's okay. This process is clunky. I'm personally in this 7 years to this point. And we have probably a year to go, maybe a little more, who knows? But at the same time, one of the things that we've talked about with the city council for a lot, the last 4 to 6 years, is that we want to hear from the public. We want to hear from members of the public on committees that have a voice for themselves. And even if I recommend some small idea, that doesn't mean that you guys have to follow that. And in fact, I think it's good that you forge your own path. Decide what you want to decide. Pick the properties that you want to pick. And we're gonna take all of that into consideration. And if we get new information on August 6th or at any time afterwards, that's our purview and that's what we have to deal with. But at the same time, I think you guys should do what you want to do. And I think council will probably be okay with that. And to be honest with you, we have to be okay with it because that's just how it works. So I think if you guys decide you want to do one thing, I would encourage you to go ahead and do that. That's how society works.
Does anyone else have a comment?
Yeah, and I now have a little bit of a problem with the fact that we have recommended something and the planning commission and city council have gone in a different direction. So, I wonder what we're missing. And, it's just automatic when that happens. It's not just once, it's happened throughout the process. They're waiting. What are we not being presented with that they are to have those outcomes?
The outcome of playing with things.
Because it is, we're gonna do a bunch of work here and at the end I go, okay, what was that worth? Because if in fact it's gonna go a different direction, the whole thing will take on a different outcome. And it's hard enough just to look at these 4 concepts, the 3 concepts of concept A, and really come up with a meaningful reasoning for me. And then, are we asking for a vote? Do we keep McKinsey Meadows or not? I mean, I'm just struggling with that. With us not being, we seem to be at odds with the planning commission and city council.
Thank you. Your comment, and I was at one of these meetings recently, and I just want to share that my experience of it was not to honor the point that like a vote was taken or was a big formal decision, was more along the lines of, hey, well, right now they haven't decided at the county level or either have the steering committee. So what's the harm in still considering MFU at this point in time? And we'll revisit it as time marches on. That was my takeaway, and I didn't feel it was. To Michael's point, it was just kind of organically the way it went, and it wasn't against the steering committee's recommendation. It was just that the city council and the planning commission have a whole lot more individuals who are just like parachuting in and hearing an update, and that was their reaction. And we all have had a lot of time to think about this again and again. So this
And so back you up, I think, that meeting, there was a lot of people having to do a lot of catch up,
in that meeting because they didn't have our body of knowledge that Therese mentioned, but also. I think in that situation, I feel because that was 2 months ago. May, yeah, that. We felt that the decision from the county was going to be a lot quicker than it was. Or we, some of the people in that room, and that's kind of why it kind of burdened. And, here we are months later and there still is not our decision, from the county. So I think that's what it kind of tilted. That I don't think it was people were kind of going against the steering committee, because again, the steering committee hasn't been official or anything, but I'm just trying to explain what I recall from that meeting. So, I think it was just this kind of feeling that, well, maybe the county will have a decision in a few weeks and that didn't happen. And here we are.
Yes. As a planning commissioner, what I recall is really council and planning commission was kind of waiting for us to come up with something. I think they're putting a lot of value on what we tell them. No, they don't necessarily have to follow what we come up here with, but they really are putting a lot of value in the people that are on this table. And they were just saying, hey, let's wait and see what they come up with. Let's not throw it out, let's not keep it. Let's really kind of see what the committee comes up.
Yes, Steve.
Can I amend my motion and then?
Is that comfortable? Well, we've already had a second.
I'll withdraw the motion, make a new motion. To exclude Mackenzie Meadows from our planning. For the.
Do I have a second?
So that would limit us to deciding between these four. So.
I think.
Any further discussion?
Chair, I just want to acknowledge that Mel Pedersen, committee members. The Zoom call, just want to for the opportunity to comment and record her vote and entertain the motion.
Sure. Hello, Mel.
Hi there. Thank
Glad you're
you.
with
Yes, thank you. I'm kind of having a hard time hearing, but I think I got the gist of everything that's happening.
Okay. Right this moment, Adi has just put forth a motion about the. I forget already exactly how you said it. If you want to say it again, that's allowed into the mic.
Well, the motion is to exclude Mackenzie Meadows from our consideration set, so we would consider between the four options that are on the screen.
Were you able to hear that now?
Not really. I hear you
Okay.
very clearly. So if you could repeat it, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
All right. The motion is to exclude Mackenzie Meadows from the steering committee decision today and focus on the concepts that concept A, A1, A2, A3.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Give a second.
I
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? No. You may, but you don't need to, just as John doesn't need to, no, it's okay.
Especially for this, for the games, just for the.
Well, did you,
She was a
I did say yes in favor.
okay, thank you.
Nose. One thing, okay, third, same or?
I don't know, so I don't think it's gonna change the date one time. If it was a tie vote.
Abstain.
Okay, so the motion passes. Thank you everyone for your input. And I'll just mention again that the alternative vision is up to the city council and with the planning commission's influence. So this is not like striking an MP forever from this process. It's allowing us to proceed with the rest of this, talking about the different concept game versions. All right, with that, who would like to make a comment? You can put your yellows up if you yellow cards up if you would like, and then you'll be part of running more.
I just wanted to ask a quick question about the letter submitted by Berkshire sources. There is reference to Barton Meadows subdivision specifically, and I just wanted to clarify that that isn't really Barton Meadows and not Barton Meadows first edition. I think we should all have the third conversation with the and do the part of the what can exclude subdivision maybe.
And so you would like the letter to be clearer.
I just wanted to clarify that it was in the Barton Meadows subdivision that would be enough to clear and not Barton Meadows.
Okay.
That I know to be right.
Yeah, well,
We're asking.
it looks like it's a Barton Meadows. They're not saying that it's hers.
Chair, we did have an offer for the letter.
Okay.
We're not asking about it's not.
Sorry.
We do have the offers of the letter, so it's, they can provide.
Sure.
Can I do it from here?
Could you use the mic?
Sure.
This one right here.
But, correct, Morgan, the reference is to Barkley Meadows, not the first edition. And also we note, that after we wrote the letter, that the Barkley Meadows, 78 acres, it's actually two pieces, and we're really referring to just the southern portion of that.
In your letter.
Yeah, because there's a reference to the difference in acres, and we figured that out after we wrote the letter, that there's two pieces.
And could you identify?
I'm sorry, Kurt Schuler, I'm the president of Brooks Resources Corporation.
Thank you. So next, that's a clarifying question. So, I'm sorry, so you're saying that it's not the entire area that's Barkley Meadows there. It's just part of that? Two of the four persons.
Yeah, below Barkley, the street.
Four of those. There's two right about.
So for anybody in the audience who doesn't know what we're referring to, there are two letters that we recommended.
There's a couple extra copies that I put out on the desk,
Okay.
on the table.
Perfect.
And they'll be also posted on our website.
Perfect, thank you. On the case that we get last minute. All right. Anyone else have?
Here.
Oh. Anna. Nope.
Oh, I was gonna start digging into the concept stage. And just give like some, I don't know how I want to structure this, so you can tell me how to get into detail, but I kind of considered all four of these concepts, all the concepts actually in the packet with kind of several criteria. How would they meet our land need, residential, employment land, park, pool, et cetera. Their connectivity to including, recreation areas as well as with other parts of the city as well as traffic. And then also thinking about the character of the town of the City of Sisters with each parcel. And so some key themes that emerged for me were that I liked concepts that had connection to Highway 126, thinking about the flow of traffic. I also really like concepts where Leitch's Creek was included or primarily included. I'm thinking of, for example, a river walk or paths that went along the creek. I also really liked concepts where parcels, those corner parcels that included Leitch's Creek and Indian Ford where they meet, because I liked the idea of connectivity, thinking about recreation and access to these riparian zones. And then, of course, all the concepts include this, but I also liked concepts that had those parcels that scored very highly in the northeast, being the inner northeast and Barkley Meadows. Yeah, so to like make that more explicit, I really like concept A, and then kind of a mishmash of concept A and maybe concept A3 or maybe A2. I think concept A was the strongest because it kind of met all those criteria I discussed that I was weighing each parcel and concept with. Maybe with the addition of a couple more of those parcels that have more of the meadow. Just thinking again of connectivity for recreation, but also the character of the city as it expands. So we want to be a city that includes reserve area and recreation and access to nature, or what kind of character do we want the expansion to have and add to the city's system.
And so, go ahead. I think we're not clarifying question on as before, all these concepts are different amounts of acreage. And then there's not a perfect solution is one is trying to capture some of that wetlands, areas. So how high can we push the number under the guise? I know our number one need is housing, right? We have to kind of really stay focused on that. However, how high can we push that number if it is, hey, we're trying to include some areas that will be protected and
I can try to answer that, and then before we lose Matt on the mural, I'll come to him as well. But we have the land that is brought into the urban growth boundary needs to tie to the need that's identified, and we need to write findings that the lawyers feel good about when we say that. So there is a need for parkland that's generally active parkland, but there's some of that might be appropriate to have passive open space, or there are also ways to ensure protection of properties that don't involve bringing it into your growth boundary. So maybe the UGB isn't the only way to meet those needs, but generally speaking, if you were to bring properties in for a residential use, but they are impacted by wetlands or something that makes that acreage not developable, you would generally not count that as developable acreage. In this area, we've been showing the crosshatched on maps, but I don't think that there are delineated wetlands on the properties at this point, so that may grow or shrink. And so, you give resource protection was really driving value there, and the delineation came back to that site was smaller, then that would be, I guess, unfortunate from that. So that's something to consider. And maybe I'll ask Scott, Matt, AC to add if I've forgot.
Yeah. Brad, if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, just real briefly. I mean, I'll just kind of reiterate a comment I made, I think at the last meeting, which is that I think there's a certain amount of play in terms of the number of net and gross acres that we could add here. But I wouldn't recommend going too far over that. And I do, so, 15, 20%, I'm just putting that out there. But if we start recommending an expansion that's 50% more, and I would think about it in terms of developable acres, not so much gross, but developable, getting over it by 50%, it's just going to increase the chances of a potentially successful appeal against the decision. I don't think any of us want that. So I would just think about that in terms of how large an expansion area we think about here. And I think, Andrew makes good points about the fact that, we may not have wetland delineations, but we're working with the best information we have. And I think it's reasonable to use that information to estimate the amount of net and gross acres we have here. And again, come up with a proposed expansion area that's reasonably close to the need that we've identified. Again, I think it's okay to include a little more, especially if a chunk of that, a good sized chunk of that is not developable. So that's as much as I would say. I would echo Andrew's points and just see what else Scott has to say.
The only thing that I would add is if there's possibility that there's other tool, if the goal is really recreation. You know, specifically along the corridor, Florida Creek corridor, there's other tools that we can utilize where we don't bring them, where we can work with the property owners and purchase, give them the dedicated trail easements and get the same thing without actually having to bring it in. So, yeah, you have to negotiate with, multiple property, but that's a problem.
Thank you. Morning.
Thank you, Chair. There are 5 land use plans in this room right now, so I'm happy to do like that one deck that's the doesn't support things of grass or whatever, but I'm pretty sure, and I'm looking into you guys, that neither wetland designation nor floodplain designation allows land to be excised from development federal ability form. However, conservation isn't wood. So it's, I'm actually something I'm hoping, especially has been around introducing state reserve conservancy, or rather than the could enable the property owners to establish a form of population with parameters, because that would get more accurate there. To bring in. Otherwise, we would be bringing in as we can see, prohibits development, but under current state law, I don't think that would actually be reflected in our acre requirements or our needed acre.
I followed all of that except the very last sentence or so.
Just the denominator. So if we counted all of this as acreage that could be developed, what we would be working with in actuality would be much smaller because some of it is within the floodplain, and so it's very challenging to develop. Plus, some of it could have a wetland definition that doesn't currently exist right now, which would eliminate our ability to develop.
So question, Andrew. When you did your calculation, say for these properties that are concept they wanted to have quite a lot of attached area. Can you roughly explain to us how you dealt with the hatched area in calculating the development figures?
Yeah, for the purpose of this kind of very high level planning exercise where we're looking at a lot of different areas in the study area here, we're excluding things that are in the hatched areas. So we are considering those to not be developable in actuality. That might change once a property specific delineation happens. But based on the available data we have right now, we're saying that that's not developable acreage. So I think it might, I don't think that by including these properties, we are trying to phrase it, but I think it's the opposite of what you're worried about. I think there might be more developable land here because property owners having incentive to try to winnow down the wetlands that are shown in their property as possible.
Can you boil it down, please? You're saying they count to the gross, but not to the net.
They count to the gross, they don't count to the net. That's
So that makes it really easy for a government like me. But thank you.
Okay, thank you, Morgan. Brian. Sorry.
Thank you. I think echoing honest comments, I also prefer the options that are including land on 126. And part of that is having industrial traffic not actually route through town. I think that's an annoyance and safety issue for everybody, especially as we have more residential built on that side. Like there's obviously already going to be the semi trucks that are bypassing downtown. But I mean, having easy access for industrial on 126 makes a lot of sense. And then you can continue, hopefully, like we already have a city park on the river, and having that continuity through Largest Creek, I think would be great. And I think it'd be interesting to or better to understand the odds of actually protecting the wetlands. With being in the UGB or being outside of the UGB, because as things stand, they're about 10-acre lots. So they're county, or they're all less than 20 acres, so they're county one rep or something like that.
Which parcels are you speaking
The
of?
ones that have the red hatching. So the Indian Ford floodplain basically. So as things stand, people cannot build more homes on there because of it's less than 20 acres and most of them are have like one home on them. And in a certain way, it might be easier to preserve them and like incentivize the owners to like sell them or donate them to a recreational event when there's not incentive to actually build on it.
In other words, don't put them in the.
Right. And the incentive is actually to, we want to protect it. From your perspective. From my perspective, yeah.
Thank you. Hey, Brian.
I don't remember if this is something that we talked about in these meetings or if they were in that Parks Advisory meeting, so bear with me. But it's nice that we have, these parks that have nice manicured green grass and jungle gyms and things for that have to be actively maintained. But I would, and we're talking a lot about how do we do this? I just want to affirm that it would be great if we could have a sizable park on the east side of town. How we do it, it would be great. How we do it would be, to make it work would be incredible. But to have parks that are more open space and nature focused, and also have the bonus of being able to get around the city, whether that's walking along the White Street or up the wetlands and open area meadows. I think it's something that we should affirm that this is something that we.
Thank you. Again, I'm going to go back to you, something you said at the beginning of your comment. You were talking about getting some industrial traffic, peeled off of the main drag. And can you speak more to how you were visualizing that would exactly play out?
Yeah, there's 50 acres of open lands needed for the consultant's report. And having that off of 126 means those trucks going to the industrial developments and go straight to Brandon and then without going through without going through like the main roundabout. If they're off of Locust. Right, so right now this is Locust. And without that 120, without the section of 126, industrial would be somewhere north of here. Because that's pretty much everything. And having land that's on 126 for industrial would mean the trucks that are going to do those industrial land are not coming to the city, not coming to Locust.
Okay, so you're specifically saying that traffic, big trucks that have business to do and future commercial development along those 126 parcels, they could do their business in and out from 126. They wouldn't have to go through town. You're not addressing the general traffic situation, which is another issue that will really be a big, it's an ongoing problem that is gonna get worse as we develop more.
Or
Wherever we develop.
Yeah, right.
Wherever. Okay. Yeah, and actually that's kind of one of my points that I could make. I think I'm in favor of having property who want 26 for that very reason. I think Michael, you maybe set that concept around with like a connector that went over to Barclay, because I do see with the number of housing units that we plan to add to this area. Obviously, we have that problem, not our problem, but it is a problem, and it's good for us to think about it in light of this whole process, that having access to 126 is like another point of entry and exit of those zones, particularly, in the case of emergency. So I think I'm in favor of, access to 126 for that reason. One of the other things I had a question about was the land that's adjacent to the airport, it's like directly south of the airport. It's included in some of the concepts, and not some of the others. And it's been mentioned before that that would be a really good use for commercial space and industrial. And so if you didn't have that land, like where would you envision that you would put that in this expansion area? Is there another, would that be down by 126?
Yeah, that's what.
Okay, yeah. Which is your point.
Let's clarify, it's not all industrial land, it's some of that, 53 acres, it's retail as well, so.
All right. So what is the acreage for industrial? Is that 15?
Like, the breakdown between like component lands, just have this light industrial and retail. And
Yeah, so we have 36 acres for commercial land and 15 acres for industrial.
Or industrial.
So I have a concept I wanted to share with you all, and I put it in writing, so pass these around. Basically, it's a suggested modification to concept A1, and so concept A1 has those big parcels on Barkley Meadow, but it does not have the parcels adjacent to the airport. And I would, I'm reading people who have put in comments at the beginning of this project. About what to do with the land right next to the airport. And I do think that it might be. I don't think it's the assistant of a here and be part of that process, how and when that gets developed, it would be a potential place for like commercial. And the people who are involved in the airport have a lot of experience and a lot of ideas about how to put in another hangar, etc. That personally I'm open to. And that acreage that are just below the runway and that include the crosswind landing is about 35 feet. 26 are developed. So that was one addition that I would like to see if we go with concept everything. And the reason that when I look at these concepts, concept A is appealing to me also is that it was not include 126 parcel. But hearing you all, I mean, you're introducing ideas that I think are quite valuable, so I'm not personally against 126 parcels. I am against creating a situation where there's more of a dense traffic jam around 126, 20 and going into the roundabout on Cascade, right? It's already so jammed there. And maybe to an earlier point, if you did have those parcels, you could have some kind of an alternate that went off at 26 at those parcels and somehow connected up to Barkley Locust. I don't know what that would take, if that's really possible, but there is quite a few in pride for those of us who are on next door. People are really so upset with the traffic jams in town. And there's no concern. So the other reason that I was really liking concept A1 was that, as many people have mentioned, I'd really like to see Barkley Meadow preserved and part of it made into some kind of a recreation path, area, wildlife corridor. Reed Wilds, the creek, the creek was kind of channeled and jammed against the base of the hills there. And it's drying out. It could really be improved by regenerative agricultural practices. Which would help it act more like a bog and a wetland, which would be good for our environment locally. And would also, we're all concerned about fire. It would be one possible barrier to a fire or slowing down a fire that would be coming in from that direction, although the one previous fire would come from another direction. I think they can come from anywhere. Given the wind, right?
Sometimes they come from the sky in the form of an airplane.
Yes. So, if you just add on the airport acreage to the concept one, A1, you end up with 338 total acres and about 200 net developable. That's versus the state guidelines of 255 gross acres and 180 to 200 net acres developable. So we're right within the boundary of developable. We're over on gross. I don't know what the answer is as far as conserving that land that's on the meadow, preserving it, rewilding it. What's the best path? I think that could be a community project going forward. And I mean, my brain said, oh, be better in the UGB to see if we will have some control. But to Abby's point, maybe it's better to leave it in the county where nobody can start feeling like, oh man, if I could develop my own parcel, let's make this much money, and I don't want to play with the idea of saving the meadow. I want to get some money out of it. So I don't know the answer. And like I said, I'm also quite open now hearing you guys all talk to want some of the 126 properties being a window. And also Righteous Creek. It would give us more leverage with Righteous Creek development. And as many have spoken of, including Susan Cobb at another meeting. Wouldn't it be grand if we could have a continuation of what's going on in Creekside Park? Keep pedestrian and bike path going all the way up Righteous Creek, all the way to where it convenes with Indian Ford, let people experience that beautiful meadow, see those beautiful pieces of mountains from there. It would be a valuable asset to the community. So, that's all I'll say. And who's next?
I have a follow-up question on something that you have written here, which is that the 126 parcels may have challenges, due to constraints from ODOT and the state egress, and I believe your elected brought this up. So it'd be great if someone who knew something could kind of speak to, or how, access from 126, what it could look like. Would something a concept like 8-3 where you need a little more space so that there could be some actual exiting from the highway. And then part one of the question is kind of the getting on the highway, and then part two is kind of us thinking about this, conserving the wetland and doing thing, bringing it into the UGB versus having it right next to the UGB, so the trails along the edge, we're gonna look at it, and that's observe. How that might play into your A1.A, and is that then doing too much industrial land because all the stuff by the airport is industrial? So those are kind of my questions. So the main one is the highway you brought up in
Does anybody have more to say about the highway?
I would just add that if the idea is to get a connection to 126, it would have to involve parking. Rather than, have an urban facility going through a county plans. The state would preclude that, so it's a factor in consideration. If that's important to you, then that needs to be part of the recommendation. As far as access points, below that, Paul, if you have any thoughts on. We've done some brief discussions with ODOT, but that was it. It was still important, really looking at all of this throughout the whole surrounding the whole city. So it's something we can do is kind of check back in with them to kind of get a high level data on what they see as impacts to their system. But I think there's opportunities to designate or reimagine that section of road from a highway to a city street, you know, with possible roundabout or there is a connection to the highway. And to get speeds slowed down to make it feel more like it's part of the city versus the highway. I think it's opportunities there. There was a lot of discussion. I think it's still is that happening with that. I don't know if city staff wants to add into that to Jordan.
Well, I agree, Stat. I think that section could definitely have a reading about speed limits and traffic quality measures like street trees and things like that. I just asked Paul about Creekside Drive, which was development driven, but added at some point as an access point, up 126 down the street from there. So it's possible. Takes time, studies, all that.
Consideration for extra costs, bridges get much cheaper. Is there a possibility of potentially utilize the existing bridge that Creekside swing over with the bridge, so maybe opportunities. Everything's at least worth exploring. That's the fact that
Right. I'm gonna I don't want to recruit volunteers about all exclusive facts and won't go correct them. But I think ODOT has a standard that you can have one access point every 480 feet, which is about the entire length of that property, which means you'll have a 60-foot frontage road on that property. And one egress, one access. And that would mean that all 9 of those property owners would have to be agreeable to development, because if not, you're gonna have a hard time taking frontage road through the pasture. So I think that property has real potential, but I think it's uniquely complicated. And to sit here and say, we're gonna do this and it's gonna be industrial land, I think we'd have to get with the homeowners and say, are we all in favor? And you want to see it, and all very healthy. MMD, I think we had a 60-foot frontage road, and I think access points are about 250, 480 feet. Correct.
So I'm not sure on the exact spacing, but ODOT's got access management over there, and they got control of it. Driveways definitely differ from city streets. But yeah, I think you are correct. You're gonna end up with some type of frontage road scenario.
Here, if I may, just to chime in on some of the complications, this, as with Paul and Bill, space standards are being really rigorous from ODOT, and we're talking about freight specifically, because most of our freight comes through Highway 20 rather than Highway 126. It would necessitate some additional improvements throughout that entire triangle interchange right now. And I can't overstate the cost and the time that it would require to build another roundabout at that point. Much of the cost will be borne by whatever industrial development will occur there. I don't know if our hearing sector representative hasn't talked about that in particular, but this would be a significant dealing with all the others. Very and the other consideration for bringing these properties in is the incorporation of Wedges Creek as recreational and agricultural priorities. I would just question with them of associating industrial developments with adjacency projects for that as well. And that's not to say bringing it in is a good idea for a general purpose, but maybe for industrial, it can be accommodates and then, in other.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask Paul a quick question. You know the answer to this. If we did bring these parcels in along 126, but we wanted to widen the Creekside Bridge and make it a little parking lot or just a way to get to a path from and have more cars exit 126 and that be, would that be possible, or are we gonna live with what's there?
I think just for secondary access to those neighborhoods, it's gonna be necessary to have it exist. Unless an alternate access could be made through potentially these properties. And then there's potentially close Creekside. Or if you're still able to provide a secondary access into that neighborhood.
Can I just speak up? I used to live in Bridgeview, last week. And that bridge faces a house, so.
Faces a house.
It literally faces a house, like you can drive up it. There's a house.
Very close, yes.
Like
Right, it actually dead ends
in that house.
into a house.
Okay.
So if you want more traffic going through there, like, I don't know how the traffic will get to that road. Because of the road bridge. And on the other side is the water, area of the creek. Like, I know that's near, I go there. Yeah, so we would need like a different bridge. And you couldn't like.
Jennifer, I think Rick was the architect.
I just want to remind everybody that we're talking about UGB expansion here, not incorporation into the city. So if just because we put it in UGB doesn't give it city protections, it has to be incorporated into the city limits to be protected by the city. So we're kind of jumping the gun a little bit by saying, hey, we put it in UGB, we can protect, we can provide, or whatever. That's a step towards that, but it's not part of the city yet. So just a reminder, we're not here talking about incorporating that stuff, we're talking about possible lands could be incorporated if the homeowner or the property owner wants to.
I just, a couple of points, I definitely, tracking with the things, I would really like to see land adjacent to the airport included, for commercial, industrial, whatever, it's just the, kind of the best use of that area out there. Especially when we have that need, and I'm willing to, if there's, because that is, if we add that property in and go to, concept staying, I think that was your A1. Well, but you want, yeah, but they're also kind of talking about powered lots, but on 126.
Right, we're pulling like.
Yeah,
Okay, discussions.
Yeah, I mean, I like concept A and the respect that it does have a few, lots on 126, I would keep that minimal. I think this because of ODOT situation, we're also just getting the town really stretched out and the ability of people to be able to use other types of transportation to get from point A to point B. And that stretch was and it's measured at 1,280 feet. It's included those 4 lots, for instance. Right there. Like that. I'm willing to. I mean, I think all of us, most of us have this desire to protect wetland, open space, etc. I do as well, but I think the big problem hanging up there is that, the number one institution that could possibly help make that happen without the city getting involved is if the county had a parks department, which they don't. Up on that. One of the only county in the state that doesn't have a parks department, so maybe someday there will be one. And without that, it is kind of, we not plan for us or other mechanism, not impossible, but I'm willing to kind of give up. You know, if we're pushing too many acres, I'm kind of willing to give up some of our wetland acres in this process, just because I think to kind of Lee's point that, right now they're relatively, you know, RR10 is pretty limiting on what can happen out there. If it gets, in UGB and annex and rezoned, it really opens up the door for other things, you know, there's checks and balances, however. I just feel if I had to, eliminate something to get to a good number that we felt the state would be comfortable with, I think. You know, to some degree, they already do have some protections, and I think cut off some of that, but that's the point. So, interesting. Thanks.
So to summarize, you're in favor of land near the airport being included. You're willing to give up the open parking meadow in order to keep the total acreage within your zone. The first edition. All right, and you would like to see the 4 parcels that face wetlands included.
Yeah, that's okay.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna kind of clarify a concept that maybe Marilyn is like thinking of. It's basically taking a few of those little parcels in concept A that are in the first edition that are closest to the red meadow and then moving those up to the airport in the crossway landing. So imagine looks like a skinnier, like it just goes straight up from those 4 on the highway and then, oh yeah, we're great.
Yeah, leave that bigger, maybe zoom it in hand. Whoa. Mind reader. Go ahead and take them. I'd have to check, but what we've done there is. I need to check the acreage, but what we've done here is basically take. I think it's the same concept thing too, so we added those 4 to another area there, and you know, we're a little bit on the below the conservative side in the acreages of the things that we've planned so far, so it is, we think it's a possibility to add a little bit to that. So,
Just to point it out, it's an upside in Texas, so please.
Yeah, I was actually just gonna say, it says on this map, if you take out the right. Eastern freemost block, that would probably get you back down to whatever the word.
Which lots now?
yeah, as drawn, these the southern portion of Berkeley Meadows first edition goes all the way to the base of the hill. And I believe you're saying if you take the easternmost.
Lots, yeah, exactly where it is, because of about, you know, back to the 40 small acres. That's approximately what we have.
And you give us. Oh, and.
I'll use that app.
Of the purple that we see there. First of the things.
Concept A.
Here, let's do you have any other. Oh, all right. So it is 5:25. And we do want to allow 15 minutes for public comment, so I'm just pointing out the time. No.
So,
And like. So, like, not a this will be able to do it, people.
I think you could definitely do it, not project the same. If, you know, hey, he's looking pretty good, you know?
Yeah. All right, can we do that?
Let's do that.
Thumbs up,
Let's do those.
thumbs up and down.
Yeah.
for both A.A.
We did a part of the or to be selected.
You felt favorably towards this.
I didn't see it. No.
Mel, are you
Just
available?
dropped off.
on that?
She dropped off.
She dropped out.
Just in terms of the acreage there, about 304 gross acres and pretty much exactly 200. Developable acres.
So 304 gross and right around 200. So I don't see anybody else asking comments. We want to see the concept A.A with a little bit sliced off like we was.
It's not necessary for us to meet our acreage goals.
Those three parcels are 38.8 acres gross and about 25 acres net. So if you took those three, we're about that off. You give that 175 or so.
And that would be that. Sharp corner on the bottom right.
Yeah, the three easternmost parcels.
Well,
We don't go west of 103, but we can go a little bit more than.
I don't know what to say. But I think these are all within, reasonable tolerance of one another and not the right finding. So yeah, in the spirit of kind of the time check, we do have a, we can record a vote with kind of maps on screen if the committee wants to actually take a vote on these concepts. I can add the two that we just drew to that real quick. And there'll be an opportunity to provide text what else do you like or want to see, and it's an anonymous poll, but we could use that as kind of the capturing of the committee discussion, if that's what we want to do at this point.
So we got phones here.
Yeah, phones are a computer of some kind.
We stopped sharing.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm supposed to.
So what? Do you entertain while we take this?
Yeah, the instruction.
Yeah.
You do it.
I'm going to just use this time to point something out. One thing I didn't verbally mention that I put in my memo was that there does exist a mechanism to do a transfer, a swap in the future of some lands within the UGB or other lands that qualify. So this has been talked about a little bit in some of our meetings and the public comment that there could be a situation where a year or two down the line, against Meadow Village gets full zoning approval, and there is community and current city council at the time support for exploring doing a swap to get Kenzie Meadow Village added to the UGB and take something else out. So one of the reasons that the Barkley Meadow First Edition parcels are useful to be in the UGB is perhaps they can be used as part of a swap later. Now, this is kind of new in Oregon regulations. And so as far as I know, it's been done rarely, if at all. But it is a mechanism to make it easier than it would be this whole UGB process again. For us to explore, it would mean that all those landowners would have to agree to that, they may or may not, but just to know that's a possibility. With what my memo said relative to bringing in the metal properties that are.
Thank you, Chair. This is something that we talked about a little bit in past meetings. And I do just want to make the point that it has been done rarely, and the reason it's been done so rarely is because it's very difficult. Very difficult to get property owners in alignment. It is very difficult to avoid appeal. And in fact, it is so difficult that this past legislative session that just ended in June, the city of Roseburg and the city of Monmouth had to go to the legislature to get bills written specifically to allow them to modify that. So, and in the case where they've been working on it. 2018. So this is a very lengthy and time-consuming process. I just want folks to know that while it is a possibility, it is by no means.
Thank you again.
Okay, so I have this QR code, and if that's not working for you, you can go to www.mintnpr.com and enter the code shown on the screen here. I think we asked that hearing committee members do it. What's it saying?
It says you're all set.
You're all back up. All right, well then we'll move here. Right, I think I need to again the line for you here. So these are the concepts that we talked about today. And I've added. And a one here, and so if you, if you select your preferred, you get the numbers showing up on the screen.
You can make them bigger too. And some. So you can zoom in on them. Yeah, make them out.
Yes, that's what my plan.
So we've got 10 responses currently. There's one people at the table here.
You might have just put this in so my.
Michael doesn't have a role, it's just constant.
I was told I can't vote, so I
Oh.
didn't. Because why not? If I had the ability.
All right, so this is just another opportunity to vote in some permit, but if you have additional thoughts about the preferred UGB concept, this would be it. Add them here. I think our expectation is to share these flags basically the planning commission, the council, and say what we did here at the end, and everybody saw the maps on the screen what they were voting for talking about. But if you have additional thoughts, please.
I'm sorry, I didn't know who I'll put on the screen.
Yeah, we know that's from.
All right, I'm going home now.
Okay, so everybody voted, you wanted to vote?
Does seem like it.
All right, can you show us the results again?
Pretty strongly in support of this new concept.
A, all right, shall we have any more discussion about this? Otherwise, we can do a motion and a formal vote. All right.
Go have a discussion that.
Well, it's true. All right, who would like to make a motion about concept A.A?
I would like to make a motion that we forward A.A to the planning commission and the
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. All opposed? And she dropped off.
She dropped out.
Unless she dropped.
Abstain or abstain?
All right.
It
Thank you, everybody.
wasn't easy, but we did.
Sorry.
Okay, I think we should go to public comment now. Is there any more to say about the county retail? We kind of touched on the update earlier.
I'm looking on that to my folks at the hearing is on August 6th and we talked with the county planner and it's best guess scenario is that October 15th would be the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. Before we open public comment, I wanted to again draw your attention to the two letters that came in that we got today. And we've had all along the way great public comments, both verbally and written. Really appreciate it. If you haven't already read it, Charlie Stevens put in a very, very lengthy public comment that has lots of background information about the growth that we're experiencing, what's happening with housing, and I do recommend if you haven't yet taken the time to read it in full that you do. It's not exactly germane to our decision that we just made, but it is part of this bigger story. And with that, we're going to open public comments with Chris Quebec. Are you here, Chris?
Sure.
All right, please state your name and address. And
Thank you for coming to this week. I represent Kinsey Meadows and Village LLC in the county process. So I just wanted to update everybody on that. My comment really derived participating would still be in consideration. The vote earlier in the kind of was my comment in that category for what it's worth. But I want to be able. So I attended the work session this morning, where they talked extensively about our application. I don't want to put words in the county commissioner's mouth, but I'm never been more confident that we'll get a positive vote on August 6th. And I'm confident the 21-day appeal period will run from that date. And the second comment I want to make is in a process like this, or any length process, I don't think you should drive the decisions by fear of an appeal. Land use comes with costs. People like that no matter what decision the city makes here on an alternative, that's going to be difficult. So we're talking a possibility of years for this process, just like ours. So I think if I were making this decision, and I know you're not the city council, but I would look at what property you think is best going to deliver the needed housing fast. And I think that's the end of the country. So I wanted to leave with those thoughts. Thank you.
right, thank you, Chris. Kristen Reidenberger.
think that. Again, I also wrote my comments during this meeting, so again, for what it's worth. Landmarks recommends city sisters expand into Council A. A also is a great option, as long as it has variable acreage, to what we're looking for. They offer an opportunity to connect our pay to Highway 156 for traffic flow and navigation options. A mix of properties for the variety of land and avoids this more simply areas. I also, I think she just put in the room again that concept A3 with all of the properties on 1.6 presents a risk of moving ourselves into a corner in terms of the annexation requirements and adjacency. And really be difficult to unlock those properties when we need them. So the question gets A3. And then as I've shared before, this budget doesn't support concepts being used. It gives those resource lands for forest, wildlife habitat, open space, and recreation values. There's not land to move this property, and the city's affordable housing needs can be met. And Land Watch proposes a rezone application as their recommendations are concerned about, including the code criteria for exception chilling go forward. Kinds of programs.
Thank you. First, Robert.
How you doing? I've been there about 40 years, 1 year most of you been alive. I'm one of the 3 families that own Mackenzie Meadow. I'm the only one that's ever lived on it. It's buildable property right now. We can build 4 houses on it. It's legally, I don't know what land for them actually, Jeremy, but if you're wrong. We're the only families that are willing to solve the problem. We got families living in the woods. We got workforce housing that is non-existent. The Mackenzie Meadow families are ready to go. I know the people that you're circling the yellow squares around. Hope to put roads through their property. Hope that they develop. They're not going to do it. Those are homes. Those are home sites. Those are mini ranches. It's not going to happen. We can make it happen. We can give you workforce housing. We can give you first-time home buyers. We can do it right away. We don't need traffic. We can walk to school. We can walk to shopping. We can ride bicycles. You're talking about traffic. Talk about a mess. You guys got a mess. I've never seen it so bad. I've been drawn a long time. Mackenzie Meadow does not add to that mess. And you've got a real problem. So don't put us on the shelf. I think you ought to put us on the top of the mountain. Because we're the ones that can fix it. And so don't just throw us away. We're not going anywhere. We'll be back. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Dan, are you here?
Good evening, Chair, Mayor, and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Jen Kovitz, and I'm here on behalf of local home builder Eden Home. To each of the members of the steering committee, thank you for your service to this process. I suspect it has taken longer than you anticipated, than you volunteered for, and we really appreciate your commitment to this community. Eden Home strongly supports the Mackenzie Meadows and the inner northeast properties sub-areas as specific sites for inclusion to sister UGB expansion. In our 35 years developing communities and building homes in Central Oregon, we've learned what kind of land can produce middle-income housing quickly, affordably, and at scale. This experience informs our confidence that both the inner northeast properties and Mackenzie Meadows would help sisters to successfully meet its residential housing needs within the city's upcoming UGB expansion. Today, you've discussed several refinements to Concept A. And since Concept A and Concept B were first presented to the steering committee,
Concept A has been widely misinterpreted as the fast, low-risk route to housing in sisters, and concept B as the slow and high-risk route. Respectfully, this is a misinterpretation based on a series of assumptions. As Susan Cobb reported in the May 13th edition of the Nugget, the earliest concept A and its variations might produce new developments is spring 2029. And that's assuming landowners and developers immediately file master plan and subdivision applications. And while concept B, as Chris noted, may be appealed, so too may concept A and its variations, as other Oregon cities have learned through their UGB standard process. Have potential appeals to A variations been sufficiently evaluated and discussed? By this time next Tuesday, August 6th, it is likely we will all know the outcome of the Deschutes County Commissioners' vote. For now, we have the hearings examiner recommendation to approve a conclusion he arrived at by applying current state land use laws. We urge the City of Sisters to include the inner northeast properties in the UGB expansion and to please keep Mackenzie Meadows on the table at least through the county's decision next week. Hayden Homes is confident from our experience that these particular sub areas are Sisters' best bets for future housing quickly and at scale. And if the county does approve Mackenzie Meadows' rezone application, the Sisters City Council and Planning Commission now have excellent detailed feedback from this committee on the parcels and conservation opportunities in concept 8.A. We suggest that tonight's feedback be combined with Mackenzie Meadows in a final site selection for UGB expansion. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben Walsh.
The committee and it's participating in it's been a great process. It's been really studied. So, like other people have said, so many comments received prior to vote, so it's just sort of vote blank. But she does this year, there was some pushing vote to the commission to consider. So this makes sense. So attacking this, a few of the things I want to say. For the oh, I'm sorry, thanks, I'm all. I grew up on 607 floors, everybody can know. It's in the house for want to suggest that but new density of 8.5 normal units per acre is pretty aggressive. I don't know exactly how all the calculations are coming from NIG, but I think if you take away 20% for roads and things like that, we're talking about a 4,100 square foot lot, which is that's pretty small by Sisters standard. Somebody like maintaining character, and that's a pretty big push. And there are some provisions in state law for safe haven that might allow density down to like 6 units per acre. I think those are things that ought to be considered. There are parts of the process that have pushed that sort of increased base density presumption. But I don't know that it's beyond consideration. I think there are a lot of dynamics afoot in the state that would support a consideration like that of a lower density. I also think, we can see it in the numbers presented in some slides. It looks like there may be something on the order of a quarter acre added to existing houses as a deduct from gross acreage. And I think it's not hard to imagine that turns into an obstruction to redevelopment property where there's an existing house. So I mean, I think the city could consider things more like an acre and a quarter, acre and a half, 2 acres for existing. So I mean, ultimately what I'm arguing is that there are a lot of reasons to push acreage, and I think there are good justifications under existing law, some of which is new, tested. I think to that point, a section 58 swap, the SB 57. I think the Roseburg case that you referred to, I don't think that's a section 58 swap. I think we actually read section 58 to laundry list of requirements and criteria that we swapped with not subject to. Things we, I don't know. It's so much fun.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience or on Zoom who would like to comment?
Martha Meeker would like to speak.
Martha? You're good, Brian.
All right, can you hear me now?
You can.
All right, super. Hi, I'm Martha Meeker, 69934 Camp Polk Road, and I'm the Sisters representative to the Deschutes Soil and Water Conservation District, and I just wanted to make folks aware that should parts of the Lower Indian Ford watershed become part of the UGB, we can help. We're currently in the area already. We sponsor the Deschutes Watershed Group, or excuse me, we sponsor the Indian Ford Watershed Group, and we're currently in the area doing some biological and ecological assessments with the hopes that eventually in the coming years, we can develop a plan that will increase water flow and native vegetation back primarily in the lower Indian Ford area, but with an eye towards the entire Indian Ford watershed. So as the city goes forward, when we have that plan, we also have connections to the Deschutes River Conservancy, the Upper Deschutes Watershed Council, ODF, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the Deschutes Land Trust. So once we have that plan, we are also a good point of contact for anybody in the area, and we will also be bringing funds to help us primarily probably incentivize individual landowners towards conservation in that area. So if the city is interested, we would be more than happy to come and talk and hopefully bring you in on the plan if you do have parts of the lower Indian watershed and inside the UGB at some point. Thank you very much.
Great information. Thank you, Martha. Okay, anybody else? I think public comment can be closed then. Appreciate everybody sharing your thoughts, and now we're going to move on to next steps. Scott, you want to start that?
Next steps are outlined on this slide. So we're planning on a planning commission meeting August 21. Is that still accurate? All right. And a city council meeting to be determined in the fall. We will continue to monitor the Kennedy Meadow rerunning process, and we'll be working with public works staff and ODOT and others on the framework for expansion area planning, including annexation policies and some initial thoughts on infrastructure layout and things of that nature. Just want to say thanks for staying with us for this process. It's been, I should have looked at how when our first meeting was, but it was about a year ago, I think. So we've been and I think we've done.
Just like to add on to that, it's been a long road to hoe. It's a little longer than we signed up for. So thanks for sticking through this with us. Still got a ways to go. Stay involved and see how it turns out. It's I think it's going to be a better project, a better expansion, better overall everything because of the work you guys put into this. Was an interesting conversation with a lot of different views. It's been fascinating to listen to you guys hash this out, and it's kind of what we mentioned that we created this thing. And now it's on the plan Christian Council. Thank you so much for everything you guys have done. So
I'd like to send, things from city council, huge amount of time, a lot of thinking, contemplation, some heartache a little bit here and there, and the public process is a messy process, and we see it at council level all the time. And with this, thanks for serving and letting this community know that we want to spend some time helping shape it down the road. I mean, this is a 20-year plan. Some of it's going to come faster, but some of it might not happen at all. So we're just doing the best we can, and we appreciate it.
Can I have a question for the city? when we first embarked on this project, it was, mentioned that at the tail end, once the UGB was defined, that we would be part of dialing in the details of this is generally where, like, Merkel will go, this is generally where we can say a park or two should go, roads, schools, residential. Do you see that happening? Is a separate process now to involve the community or like what's it? When and how that's gonna happen?
I don't know if we've fully hashed it out yet. We still have some process to go through before we go to that point. I've seen different ways of it being done where you get a stakeholder getting together that consists of like operators that are doing that actual UGB area to help kind of plan that out. In addition to the technical advisory committee of traffic consultants, traffic engineer, the city public works director, planners, and whoever else might have a say in how that develops to help advise that group with technical information. But we have, I think, potentially, I guess I'll throw this word in there because they kind of envision this when they put the original scope of work together about how this group can continue to be involved in that.
Yeah, I guess I'd say, just given the way the timeline has changed, we have to take a look at budget, but if there's interest in people wanting to participate from this group, I think definitely let Scott know and we can figure out a way to accommodate that. It could be maybe another meeting like this, or maybe it's an online exercise or kind of a Zoom meeting where we can all get together and go through options like we sort of did today and kind of add or subtract things along those lines, or and we can think of some other ways to accommodate that. But I think if there is interest among folks on the committee to continue working through the area planning process, we can definitely accommodate that. But I don't know what that looks like.
Thanks. So you have to tell him if anybody's interested in what Scott knows.
Well, and I'll just be flat honest with you, city council knows your bona fides through this process, right? So you guys have done the homework and done a lot of things in your voice. It's not any less because this part's over. Honestly, if you came to us and said, hey, don't forget about X, Y, Z, you would probably be able to bend our ears a little more easily than this somebody who just moved after yesterday, right? So we want to listen to all voices, but we also know everything. So we're not going anywhere. We're going to be looking at the same thing again. And that was
just to be clear, this process is not a public process, shouldn't say that. Yeah, it is a public process. With opportunity for you to participate. So even if you want to participate passively or prompted wherever you are interested, there will be probably a clearinghouse component to it, and it's something that will eventually be adopted by first recommended by planning commission and adopted by council. So that area plan is a public process itself.
Right, and there's always public comment at the beginning of every city council meeting and every planning commission, right? So don't forget about that. That's just for the people at the table, and it's for everybody. So.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your great contribution here. And this meeting is adjourned.